you glorious gamers out there. Welcome to the PlayersToo Podcast, the video game podcast for gamers like you, by gamers like you. You can follow PlayersToo on all the social media, that's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, the lot. For our written content, you can go over to PlayersToo.com, that's PlayerStoo.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts, it really does do a huge amount for the exposure of the podcast. And if you could give us a review, nothing special, just a wee thumbs up emoji is absolutely fine and is all we're looking for. We don't ask for a lot here at PlayersToo. Hashtag 5 seconds, 5 stars. We're going to make it a thing. It's definitely going to be a thing. All right, on with the show. With me as always, Mr. Lewis Camley. How's it going, Lewis?
It's going really well, Mark. Good to see you. It's been a wee while since we were last together on the PlayersToo microphones.
Yes. Thank you for everyone who listened to us with or on about ourselves last episode. Yeah, I was on holiday and basically couldn't record anything. So we decided to do a little episode out of time, which actually I thought it turned out all right, as long as you're okay about just listening to me and Lewis talk about ourselves for quite a long period of time.
It will never happen again.
It will literally never happen again. Anyway, what have you been playing?
I have been playing a new game this week, or well, a game that's new to me at least, which is Baba Is You. This is a Finnish indie game developed by a guy who goes by the name Himpuli, developed and published by one person as far as I can tell.
Oh really? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and you might have heard about this. It was being talked about a little bit earlier in the year. It came out back in March on PC and Switch, and I think it's on still not on any other consoles. It is essentially an incredible, very strange puzzle game, which is perfect for anyone who isn't even a gamer. There's almost no kind of traditional video game elements to this. Essentially, it's just a series of increasingly difficult logic puzzles where you operate and maneuver words, actual physical words on the screen, in order to create new rules which would change the environment around you. So you might have something that says wall is stop, so you can't pass a wall, but you can then change wall to be wall is jellyfish, and then you can pass it because jellyfish isn't stop. That's a very, very small version of what this game does. It is a total brain teaser, and I have got absolutely lost within it. It's so much
You're
fun.
really enjoying it?
It's great. It's another one of these games. I know we have our differences about it, but a game like The Witness, which is another incredible puzzle game to me, at least, where you will often just sit for a long time staring at the screen thinking, what the hell am I supposed to do here? How do I get beyond this?
Very much my experience of The Witness.
I completely understand that, and that is similar within Baba Is You. There are moments where you're kind of just sat there for a long time thinking, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know how to solve this puzzle. I'm not sure that I could ever see a solution to it. And then suddenly it'll just come to you.
It just totally clicks.
And it's because of that, it's a fantastic game. I've been playing it kind of with my flatmate. I even showed it to my partner, who's not a gamer by any stretch, and they were really interested in it because it's not something that gamers alone can play. It's something that anyone
it's
can
kind
get
of like
involved in.
it's a logic puzzle. See,
Yeah.
this is the difference between this game, which I think looks really, really interesting as well, and The Witness. There is actual logic to this. It is a literal logic puzzle, whereas often in The Witness, it just seemed totally random and you could just guess the solution accidentally without actually knowing what you were doing. And I never really liked that, but I need to go back and give The Witness another try anyway. I know that everyone raves about it, you know.
There is a lot of logic within
it just
The
didn't
Witness
click
as well,
with me,
but yeah, it's
particularly the first time that I played it. But Baba Is You looks really, really good. It was definitely been on my watch list on Switch and Steam for quite a while now, to be honest with you. I'm glad you're liking it, man.
It's superb, because it was one of these, like, on a whim. I've been kind of following it for a while. I heard a lot of people talking about it when it first got released, and it was just sitting there in need of something fresh to play. It's only, I think, £11 or something on the Nintendo eShop just now. I'm playing it on Switch. Yeah, it's not expensive. It doesn't feel like an expensive game. It's not graphically, powerful or anything. So even if you've got a crap laptop and you're playing on Steam, you'll be able to run it. It's super basic, just a really straightforward, simple 2D art style. But it is superb. It's really worth playing, and just a big hats off to the guys involved in this, because I think it started out as like a game jam game a few years ago. It came from nothing, and it's made waves this year, and it's really good fun. So yeah, Baba Is You, check it out if you can. And on top of that, I was also playing a bit more of Cuphead, which I am still struggling through the kind of end of the second island, really enjoying it, but again, I just don't have enough time. It always feels to me like to get beyond levels, you need sort of like 40 clear minutes where you can just really run at it, and I keep getting like 20 minutes and having to stop, but it's just, superb, great fun to play. What about you?
Well, I have just finished Cuphead. Hooray!
Because that whole bit was a setup.
because I went on holiday and did have a lot of time to play it. No, I finished it at the end of last week. It was real tough. It was a real tough game. I actually thought some of the bosses on the third island, the third world, sorry. So you're in the second world, and then the world after that. I thought some of the bosses on the third world weren't as difficult as the bosses on the second world. So if you're like struggling quite a lot with some of the bosses, like I know Grim Matchstick, like famously, is one of the more difficult ones,
and is one that I where I am right now.
There you go, and is one that I definitely struggled with as well, because some of those other bosses are a lot more, I don't want to say forgiving because that's not the right word, but there's like a pattern that you follow, and if you follow that pattern, you're going to do it, and if you fuck up, then you know why, you know what you've done. It's not just a random thing that's happened within the level. One of the bosses that I just particularly want to highlight is, what was it, Dr. Cal's robot, I'm sure it was. What is one of the most difficult bosses I've ever done in a game, and King Dice is famously the most difficult boss in this game, allegedly, but I actually kind of sort of breezed past him.
Oh wow.
It really never took me all that long to get past King Dice. And then the devil was also very difficult, but God, that robot, fuck that guy. Honestly, I spent the better part of 2 days gaming, just playing that one level to finish it. It was absolutely solid. It was really, really difficult, but really, really enjoyable. It was great, the whole experience of it. It's just such a joyous looking game. And as well, like the news broke today that they're getting a Netflix animated series, which is just bizarre and amazing, and I hope it's not terrible, but I'm totally going to watch it anyway.
Yeah, it's a really interesting, odd bit of news, but a show from those guys with those characters I think could be a lot of fun, and it pays dividends to the idea of this being a franchise that's going to go on. We know we're getting DLC next year now. Surely if the show's a success and it has merchandise sales to match, then, you know, that definitely continues into the future, which will be superb, because it feels like there's just so much more you can do with that art style in that world.
Absolutely. You know? Yeah, and they recently delayed the DLC because of crunch reasons, basically, so they extended the deadline. So I think that's a good decision. It's unfortunate that we have to wait longer for the DLC, but it's good that those guys aren't breaking their backs trying to get it out for an arbitrary deadline, effectively, you know. Just another couple of things that I've been playing as well. I've been kind of trying to smash my indie backlog. So I played Life is Strange Before the Storm. This is a prequel to the first Life is Strange game, where you play as the character Chloe from the original game. And I've got to say it was surprisingly good, because...
Why do you say surprisingly? Because you really liked the first one.
I really liked the first one, but the reason that I really liked the first one was because of the rewind mechanics, the time mechanics within the game that character has, but this character doesn't have that. So I was kind of like, how's this going to work? Is it going to be as good? I didn't really know, but it told a really heavy story, to be honest, and quite a sad story, but it was very good, and it was just kind of nice to be back there and feeling that you're in a familiar environment, although it's totally different this time around. And yeah, it's kind of geared me up for Life is Strange 2, which I'm definitely going to buy. I'm going to wait until all the episodes are eventually out, but I will definitely get around to that as well.
So just to check there, then, it's just a much more straightforwardly narrative game than the original. Then there's no kind of supernatural stuff. It's just a story with dialogue options and that kind of thing.
I can't think off the top of my head of any supernatural things that happened. No, so that in itself is a bit different from the other games. Even the Awesome Adventures of Captain Spirit had a wee bit of kind of supernatural elements to it, but that one didn't. It was mainly story focused, and it was mainly telling Chloe's story before Max, who's the character that you play in the first game, kind of got there. Which is actually far more interesting than I thought it was going to be.
Good stuff.
Another game that I was been playing is Night in the Woods, which was an indie darling from last year, wasn't it?
I think it was
2017. Was it 2017? Is it that old? God, honestly, I cannot tell when games came out anymore. It is ridiculous. But I've got to say, I'm not enjoying it anywhere near as much as I thought I would.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So I know that you played it a bit as well and fell off.
Yeah, I did fall off. I played it a wee while ago. Sorry, just to confirm, it did come out in February 2017 originally.
February 2017?
Yeah,
Jesus.
that was like back on
that is a long time ago.
If you don't know this game, it's essentially just a kind of little narrative adventure game.
It's like a 2D walking simulator.
Yeah, you walk around, you speak to people, you play a bunch of bass guitar. I found it a really...
There's a weird rhythm game built in it.
Yeah, and so you're playing as... what are you, like a raccoon?
You're a cat.
Oh yeah, you're a cat, that's right, yeah. And you've got all sorts of like other animal mates. And I really liked the humour in it. I think that it had interesting writing, and that these characters seemed quite kind of real and interesting, and they had lives that sort of mirror the problems of kind of 20-year-old millennials today.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with any of that, and I think that it does explore those themes. And I do think that the writing is very good. It just, from a gameplay perspective, you just do the same thing over and over and over and over again. And it, like, for me, it's only just starting to get interesting. And I know that I'm kind of like 2/3 of the way through the game now. I'm like, that's too long for an indie game to just start being like really interesting. I'm not saying that it wasn't interesting before, but yeah, it never really sunk its teeth into me until recently. Like, because I, again, maybe a bit like you, was thinking like, I could fall off this. Like, I could quite easily fall off this, and it was so critically acclaimed at the time. So I don't know if something's going to be happening like with a big end reveal or something like that. I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to finish it. Yeah, it's not quite grabbed me the way that I wanted it to, effectively.
I think that's fair enough, yeah. I never felt that so consciously as you're describing it now, but yeah, I just reached the point where I was like, I've kind of had enough of this and something else has come out that I want to play, so that's that. You know?
Yeah, one thing that there was in the game, there's a game within the game called Demon Tower, which I got slightly obsessed with. So I'm actually enjoying the game within the game slightly more than the game itself, which is a bit sort of weird. But I do kind of like their wee. It's almost like a classic Zelda game in style. Yeah, it's just a tiny little 2D game where you just go and get a key and then open the door and there's a boss before every door that you have to open and fight, and that's it. And then you just go to the next level and do the exact same thing over and over and over again. But I actually quite like it. Maybe we should just release that. I'll buy it. And actually, I've just remembered that although I haven't played this yet, but I have forgotten to tell you before we started recording that I bought Crash Team Racing.
Oh wow,
the Nitro Fueled one. So we'll definitely get a wee shot after
the
this.
show. What console?
Switch. So I've decided for portability and long load times.
Yeah, we better start loading it now.
Well, I did make sure it was installed. I made sure that if there was any patches that are already installed, any optimization is good for load times.
That's exciting.
So after this we'll get a go and we'll report back next week. On to the news. Okay, news item number 1. Epic will refund Shenmue 3 Kickstarter backers who wanted to play the game on Steam. I think it was a couple of weeks before we actually launched the podcast, it broke that Shenmue 3 wasn't going to be on Steam and instead switched alliances, as it were, to the Epic Games Store because of their better revenue for devs. But subsequently, there was a lot of Kickstarter backers who had wanted a Steam key for it, so there was a bit of kind of animosity there, I think, and rightfully so. Like I don't have a problem with that. I know that there's a lot of friction between the Epic Games Store and Steam evangelists. But I think that Epic are doing the right thing here, to be honest with you. They themselves are refunding the backers. It's not coming out of the development budget for Shenmue 3, which I think is really good. And Tim Sweeney, the Epic CEO, has actually extended this offer to other crowdfunded games if they think that taking the game off Steam and putting it on Epic Games Store and that they'll have to refund backers is going to be a big problem for them. He said, don't worry about that. If you want to come over here and get a bigger revenue share, we'll refund any Kickstarter backers that want it, basically, which I just think is great. I mean, it's just a good thing to do. It's a very customer focused thing to do from the Epic Game Store, and yeah, I'm sure a lot of people will be complaining about this because a lot of people seem to have take any opportunity to jump on the Epic Game Store.
Yeah,
but I think this is a really kind of classy move, to be honest, given the situation.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's a pretty generous thing for Epic to do. There is one downside to it, that apparently if you back the project at a higher kind of rate, you might not get all of your money back, but to a certain extent that's what happens with Kickstarter. You know, you wanted to back this game is being made. If you get the money back for your actual physical copy of it, and that's the other thing, the developers originally said they would try and get physical copies or PS4 download codes if that was preferable to getting your money back if you didn't want to play it on in the Epic Store.
Yeah, that's right.
So I mean, they've done everything they can to try and kind of placate people who are frustrated about this, and I think kudos to Epic. It feels to me like they keep making the right steps. I know a lot of people probably are spitting at their earphones for me saying that, but
yeah, I mean, look, I am always in favour of giving the devs a bigger revenue share for their games, for their time. I mean, if I'm buying something off the Apple Store, like an app or whatever, I want that money to go to the developers. I don't necessarily want it to go to Apple. Yeah. It's like if I'm buying a game on Steam, right? Steam have got to make money. Fair enough, they absolutely do. They've got a website to run. They've got lots of games to manage. They absolutely have to make money. Fair enough. Does it have to be 30%? Epic seem to say definitely not. And I think the more revenue that's going to developers, the better. Have Epic done it in the best way possible? Maybe not, but I think that they really want to rattle some cages here, and they definitely are.
And they've said that themselves, that this is the only way they can change the status quo, is to try and undercut and get these exclusives and kind of change how people are accessing the games. So
yeah, and I think if Steam don't change, and Epic basically laid down an ultimatum for them to say, well, if you change your policy to match ours, then we'll stop all this.
Yeah.
So I don't know, if you're angry about what Epic's doing, then maybe you turn your anger towards Steam and be like, well, why can't you match this?
Yeah, compete.
You know, like, why are all these games leaving us over here in this community to go over there, but just because you won't match them. Like that's how I would feel, be annoyed. Like, I wouldn't be annoyed at Epic, who I think are doing kind of the right thing. Maybe not in the best way, but overall, definitely anything that gets the devs more money, the better. You know, anything that makes their game more valuable to them, anything that makes them be able to make more games in the future, great.
Yeah. I think if you're a listener and you have any particular kind of interest in this seeming battle between Epic and Steam, particularly if you're critical of Epic in a way that we haven't really been here, it'd be great to know your thoughts. So give us a shout on social media.
Also worth pointing out that me and Lewis are definitely console gamers through and through, although I did very recently spend like £45 on the Steam summer sale, but we only kind of dabble in Steam and PC gaming. Like we both have laptops. None of us have these amazing PC rigs or anything like that you see. We're console gamers basically. So yeah, if there's something that we're not seeing, I know there's a lot of kind of waffle around their privacy policy and things like that, but I think a lot of that's really been cleared up, and a lot of that was a bit of misinformation actually at the time as well. But yeah, I think nowadays, apart from not having a lot of the community features that Steam does, and Steam does have a lot of community features like that where you can leave comments, there's forums and things like that for various games, which is great, which is really good. Epic doesn't have that yet, I would say, but they are obviously, like, they're a brand new store, so I mean, they can't have everything out of the gate, you know. They're just trying to establish themselves just now. I think that in principle, what the Epic Game Store is doing is better than what Steam is doing. And if I were a Steam gamer, I was a PC gamer, if I was very invested in the Steam ecosystem, I would be turning around and saying, well, I really want to play Shenmue 3. I don't really want to play on the Epic Game Store, so why aren't you matching this? Like, why can't it be here? Yeah. Like, all that means is that you take a bit of a pay cut and I still get to play my game where I want to play it, and I still get to stay in your community. I don't know, that's the way my mind would be working about it. But yeah, if you feel differently, feel free to hit us up. Okay, news item number 2. Sony Chief Executive Kenshiro Yoshida, man, that is the best I've ever said that name. I'm so pleased with myself. It says that the PlayStation 5 is a niche product for hardcore players. The company said that they will be concentrating on strengthening their relationships with larger game publishers, as well as working on AAA exclusives. Now, there's 2 parts to this article. This is from a gamesindustry.biz article, which you can find in the show notes over at PlayersToo.com. There's 2 interesting points in here. One is that Sony are not planning to showcase any independent developers at this year's Tokyo Game Show. If you don't know what Tokyo Game Show is basically the Japanese version of E3. It's absolutely colossal. It is a massive, massive game show. And the independent developers are feeling, quite rightfully, I think, sort of shunned. And I don't really think that's a good look, although it's probably a good look to the people who quote-unquote are hardcore gamers, that Sony are pandering to them, I suppose. But I don't think it's a good look to kind of brush aside these indie titles, particularly because a lot of fans, well, definitely me and you, like, really love indie games. Like, I've spent most of the last 2 weeks playing indie games, you know what I mean? Like, I think that some of the most creative things that are happening in gaming just now are coming out of indie games, and just to say, no, we're not going to do that because we need to sell our new console and we're going to focus solely on AAA development and first party games, I don't know, it doesn't feel like a great look. It doesn't sit very well with me, you know.
It's not amazing. I think there's a few things to this story. First of all, it should be said that this wasn't actually a public statement. This was something said at a company strategy briefing, and that was then kind of reported outwards from some anonymous. I think it was actually the Wall Street Journal that eventually broke the story, got the information, but we are citing an article from gamesindustry.biz. Yeah, and on top of that, also, it should be said that this obviously doesn't mean that there won't be indie games on the PS5.
No.
That is what it's going to be. And, you know, they didn't do a lot of indie focus, say, at their last E3 appearance last year. You know, most of their stage was focused on their AAA first party titles. Yep. And so I don't think that this says anything too dramatic. It's easy to kind of take that headline and freak out. Although I should say that after all of our kind of chats recently about streaming, and is Sony really ready for this future of gaming that we're kind of facing up to, this is the first bit of news that's kind of made me a bit nervous about the next generation of PlayStation.
Just because they're focusing on
just because of the language around it, because I completely understand that what they are sort of really saying is this is going to be a high-end product, this is going to be able to create amazing graphics, it's going to play really quickly, you know, all these advancements in technology that, like you say, the hardcore of the hardcore gamers are going to want to know about. They're going to want to know
for the players. Yeah, that was their slogan for the.
Although what that means, I would have assumed that encompassed a bigger span of people than just the big kind of, you know, as they say, hardcore gamers. Yeah. But it's just that thing of they're saying this stuff because it will sell the machine over Xbox, basically. If they say you're going to get the best performance, the best look, the best quality games on this system, they're going to sell more of them. In reality, then you'll still go there for your indie games in the way that we do with PlayStation 4 just now, you know? It seems a bit like kind of marketing spiel that's not really come out in the right way, but it is frustrating if they don't give a lot of focus to indies going forward.
It is disappointing, considering PlayStation, particularly in the PS3 era, were actually very good at focusing on indie games. And another thing that kind of came out of this was that the indie games will still be there because we'll have sold so many consoles, and just like that assumption that they'll be there anyway, so we don't have to give anything back. Like I just don't like
arrogance.
It's an arrogance, and it's an attitude that I just don't like, and it's an attitude that lost them the PS3 generation as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, it wasn't great, but the other thing that I thought was quite interesting that came out of this was that Sony were going to be strengthening their relationship with large publishers, and there's been rumours for a while now that PlayStation or Sony might be looking to make acquisitions because Microsoft are buying up every game developer with a pulse, and then THQ Nordic are buying every other game developer even if it doesn't have a pulse.
So and every IP they can find.
Absolutely. I think that wouldn't necessarily be a bad move for Sony. I'm just not sure quite who they would buy, apart from, Insomniac is the obvious one, who, despite the fact that they just released Spider-Man on the PS4 as an exclusive, they are still an independent studio, as is Kojima Productions, and I think that they are the two most obvious ones that people would obviously go for. But Insomniac in the past have worked quite extensively with Microsoft, and I think that they are a company like, for example, CD Projekt Red, that really value their independence, you know? And Kojima Productions, after the whole Konami situation with Kojima, which ended very poorly, I'm not really sure how interested he would be in being bought by anyone else or working for anyone else other than himself. You know, he's got the name. You know what I mean? He can do what he wants in his own. You know. So, do you have any other thoughts on who they might buy?
I think in some ways that model of Insomniac and Kojima Productions might be more the route they go down, where they start to bring some of these bigger developers in-house but not fully buying them. You know, you kind of tie them up to contracts that say you're exclusive for a while. Insomniac does seem the most likely. I heard kind of a few rumours about Remedy, which obviously, like, we know that
was one of the ones I was thinking about.
Yeah, Control, which is, due out in a couple of months, next month actually, that has been kind of tied to the PlayStation in a lot of ways. Yeah. It was, was it announced on the PlayStation stage at E3? I think it was.
Not this year, last year. I think it might have been. I'm not entirely sure about that.
But it's just, and it didn't appear again this year, and Sony weren't there, so there's been suggestions of that. Although I think that Remedy's other big kind of modern title is Alan Wake, right?
Yeah, which is an Xbox
that
exclusive.
That was always an Xbox exclusive.
So they were, up until Control, very Xbox affiliated, which is interesting because now they seem to have kind of been more on the PlayStation side of that divide. But I don't know, but it could just be one game. They could be doing Alan Wake 2 and immediately after Control, for all we know, it's purely speculation. But I know for a fact that I think there was a big visit from Sony executives over to the Control studio and things like that relatively recently, which I think kind of got the rumours kind of flying, because they're one of the premium independent developers still out there, The other one that I was thinking about was Supermassive Games, who made Until Dawn, and that was obviously a PlayStation exclusive as well. Yeah, so they're kind of still out there, and they've worked with PlayStation quite extensively as well. So I was kind of thinking, well, maybe that one, but then their new game as well is coming to all platforms. What was it called? The anthological one.
That's the Dark Pictures, which is
that's
an episodic thing, quite similar to Until Dawn. Yeah, I could see that. Until Dawn was relatively successful for what it was when it came out.
I never played it personally. Horror games are not really my jam. I know you were quite into it.
I was quite into it. Yeah, I could see that happening. Again, I don't know. Sony don't feel super proactive in this way, in the way that we've just said about Xbox. So I'm not certain that they will buy any of these companies. They've
not been shy about it in the past. Like they've got Naughty Dog, they've got Sucker Punch, they've got various other third parties.
True, yeah.
I mean, they've not exactly been shy about it. The other things that I was thinking about was the kind of the Japanese connection. Do you know what I mean? And things like Atlas, who exclusively publish Persona 5 on the PlayStation, Sega, who have always been a bit more PlayStation affiliated than Xbox affiliated.
So they're way more Nintendo affiliated at the moment, right? With all the kind of Mario and Sonic games and that sort of stuff.
Well, yeah, I suppose kind of now they are a bit, but Nintendo don't buy studios.
No, exactly. I just don't know if they could.
They're such strong first-party IP that they don't need any of this,
The other big thing Sega sells, though, is Football Manager, in this country at least. And
that's a good point.
Couldn't really go PlayStation exclusive. I don't imagine it's so connected to PC play. So
yeah, Yeah, well, again, yeah, interesting. And the other one that I kind of heard batted about with various other people talking about the subject was Capcom.
That's
but
crazy.
I think 2 years ago that was seriously on the cards.
Yeah.
Now, after Monster Hunter World, after Devil May Cry, after
Resident Evil
2 remake, I think that they are doing A-okay.
Yeah, they just don't need it at all.
I'm just going to throw a wild one out here, right? Bluepoint, who had previously worked on Shadow of the Colossus, which is obviously a PlayStation exclusive, and the rumor has it these days that they're making a Demon Souls remake, obviously the first From Software game, or maybe not the first Souls game, we'll say, which was also a PlayStation exclusive back in the day. So maybe From Software. Imagine that. Imagine they bought.
What, you switched from Bluepoint to From? No way.
Just both. Like Bluepoint would be amazing. They're like the premium remake kings and port kings. You know what I mean? Like I would love to see them being given something original to do, see what they could do with something like that. But as well, like PlayStation have got a massive back catalogue of things that they could just
chuck their
remake,
way,
and they do an absolutely stellar job if Shadow of the Colossus is anything to go by. And yeah, From Software is not a real thing. That's not really going to happen. I just think it'd be mad if it did. And news item number 3. EA Executive Vice President Matt Bilbey says he struggles with the perception that EA is the bad guy. Now that's quite a statement. Because other than Respawn games, so if you think all the way back to Titanfall 1, not even Titanfall 2, so Titanfall 1, then there was Titanfall 2, then there was Apex Legends, all of which are pretty damn good games, I would say. Mm-hmm. Other than that, I can't think of a single good game that EA has made in that time. Some would argue Dragon Age Inquisition. I would argue against that.
You enjoyed that game fine.
It was janky as all fuck, man. Jesus.
Yeah, but it was
this is also the company that has absolutely squandered the Star Wars franchise, and we're hopefully only just going to get the first good Star Wars game out of it, also by Respawn, as well as very recently telling a UK parliamentary committee that loot boxes are not called loot boxes, they are surprise mechanics and quite ethical and quite fun. I mean, and you wonder why you're the bad guy, and they still use, despite all the backlash, they still use very vicious, predatory, pay-to-win loot box mechanics in games like FIFA. And just today, I sent you an article just today from the BBC that I think it was 3 or 4 kids under the age of 10 managed to spend 550 quid in FIFA over like a 3-week period, and they still never got Lionel Messi, who is what they were getting for. Yeah. They spent they should get the whole fucking Barcelona team for that. Jesus Christ, that is unbelievable that this is still allowed to happen. And they wonder why they're the bad guys. They continue to abuse their customers. They continue to abuse their players. They never ever make a player-friendly decisions. They always make corporate-friendly decisions. They always make decisions to please their shareholders, and yet they wonder why they're the bad guys. It's mind-blowing to me.
Even within that story about the kids who were spending on FIFA, EA declined to comment, but did put out a link to its guidelines on controlling in-game purchases, which is effectively saying, you sort it out.
Yeah, this is your
kids spent that
and
money.
although, yes, you can turn around and say those parents, they should have had parental controls on their kids' account so that couldn't have happened. And do you know what? They should have done. But EA just can't wash their hands of that responsibility when they're constantly bombarding these kids. And that is a game for 3+. Mm-hmm. Right? So kids as young as 3 are apparently allowed to play this game. And I mean, they could accidentally hit a button and accidentally buy something and not even know what the hell they were doing. I mean, these are kids under 10 years old. Do they really understand the ramifications of what they're doing, buying all these packs again and again and again and again and again? Do they even think that it's adding up to 550 quid?
Absolutely not.
Of course not. Of course not.
Or what impact that 500 quid will have on their family.
What is the real life impact of that on their family? I mean, this could, we don't know these people's backgrounds, nor should we, but I mean, they could be someone struggling with money. I know that they found out because a card got declined because this 550 quid came off it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's absolutely outrageous.
So just to go back to the original article, which, as we said, is about them having a tough time being called the bad guys, and we've laid all of that out. There's also all of the issues around Anthem and the way that they've effectively kind of, to my mind, ripped off some players by putting out a game that really wasn't ready to be out there. They've laid off staff and stuff this year. The thing about this article, it's by Christopher Dring. It's over on gamesindustry.biz as well, and we'll include it in the show notes as usual. Yeah. It does go on to make a kind of an interesting argument about what they're doing for the indie side of the industry, which is, interesting that we were just speaking about that, talking about their EA Origins program, or EA Originals, which is kind of their platform for publishing indie games, and they, like Sea of Solitude, which came out just this week, they put that out there. Apparently EA don't make any money out of that. They just recoup their own costs, and the developer takes all the rest of the money. And so this is the same scheme that put out A Way Out, and it's just that's a really nice side of what EA is doing. They are supporting interesting game makers. They're giving players some interesting opportunities to play things, but it just all gets buried in all the terrible shit that they do.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, to a certain extent, because of how really bad I mean, they are the bad guys. I mean, they're the bad guys for a reason. Like, we've not just fictionalized this picture about them. They've done some bad shit. That's why they're the bad guys, and they don't. Like, instead of saying this, oh, we're not that bad. Oh, look at this other wee thing that we're doing over here, which is a good thing. But I mean, just ignore this big cloud of misery over here and just focus on that tiny little wee thing. Why don't you just do some really player focused things? Why don't you just remove all the loot boxes from FIFA? Like, FIFA 20 just doesn't have any loot boxes in it. Done. Suddenly EA look amazing. Oh my god, they've filled all these loot boxes out. We can just play the fucking game without having to worry about pumping extra money into it to actually win a match online. Do you know what I mean? It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. I think that coming out with statements like loot boxes are surprise mechanics and we're surprised that we're the bad guys, or we don't like this perception of ourselves, then fucking do something to change it. You know what I mean? Do something to change it. Do a big player focused thing, a big consumer focused thing to prove it. Do you know what I mean? Because right now they have Respawn and they have the games that Respawn make, and that's it.
And that's
all that they have.
They have a series.
And yet they continue to make so much money from the sporting franchise.
Well, that's it. Yeah,
and which just means that they have no interest in changing. They just have no interest in changing because they're still making money hand over fist, and the shareholders are happy. So why change anything?
Yeah, you know? And most players are just not going to take a stand against, particularly the sports games. So they've got a major comms problem. They can't seem to get through a week without saying something dumb like this. But if you've got the time, go and check out this article, because it is quite an interesting spin they put on it, and it might shift some people's opinion about EA. I think what they're saying is kind of not quite convincing, but compelling at least.
Okay, and news item number 4. Let's end it a wee bit cheery with some free games, some free games that you get this month. This is your games with Xbox Games with Gold and PlayStation Plus. So the Xbox Games with Gold is Inside, which is an absolutely brilliant indie game, which if you have an Xbox and you get these Xbox Games with Gold, that is definitely one to go and download. Big Crown Showdown, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and Meet the Robinsons. I don't know what two of those are, but Castlevania Symphony of the Night is a damn good game as well. And the PlayStation Plus games are Horizon Chase Turbo and not PES 2019. It was supposed to be PES 2019, but then it got switched for Detroit Become Human at the last minute.
On the very day that it was
it was supposed to come out. As far as Konami were aware, it was still supposed to be their game, but somehow that's changed and it's now Detroit Become Human. There was a big kind of fracas about it, but it was all just kind of nonsense, really. I think that Detroit Become Human probably appeals to more, well, maybe not more gamers, but more people that are probably downloading free games on the regular. You know what I mean?
I think that's probably true.
And it was a good game. It's a David Cage game. It kind of is what it is, but it was quite a good one. Yeah,
worth checking out if you haven't played it. We gave it a run through. Quite enjoyed it. It's got its flaws, though, for sure.
It definitely does have its flaws, but I mean, definitely. I'm
sure PES does as well. So.
Yeah, definitely worth a playthrough, especially for free. And just some shout outs to round off the news. Starting off with a few games that came out in the last week. The biggest one being Mario Maker 2, which is got all the headlines and seems to be doing really well. I actually think it looks really fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will never build a level. I just know for a fact that I will never build a level. Maybe I should buy it and play some other people's, but it just seems like a lot of money for what it is if you're not investing a huge amount of time in building levels and playing them all the time. And I kind of get why it costs the amount of money that it does.
It's also just a Nintendo game, and that's what they do.
Well, it's just also a Nintendo game, and that's what they do. But for me personally, I don't think it's worth that amount of money to me.
Yeah.
So therefore, I'm kind of struggling with it. But by all accounts, if you like the first Mario Maker, this one's even better.
Well, totally. It's 100 new levels from Nintendo plus the.
Well, that's a big kicker as well.
Plus the communities levels, which has just been. If you follow anything kind of games related on Twitter recently, you'll have just seen people putting up code after code after code for their kind of challenging levels.
Yeah.
I'm quite excited to jump into that at some point. I'm not going to do it right now. I'm going to wait a little bit just because I don't have enough time to kind of really sink into it just now.
But sure there'll be a lot of good levels by then.
But that's it. I just kind of like the idea of doing that, of clicking onto Twitter, grabbing a couple of codes, playing through those, checking out again a week later, just turning it into that kind of game.
Yeah,
so,
keeping it casual. Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, if I ever bought it, it would be to do exactly the same thing. A couple of indie games that came out as well. Sea of Solitude, which was one of these EA originals, I believe. Unfortunately, it kind of got a wee bit tepid reviews, we'll say. It's kind of knocking about a 7 on Metacritic. Do not be a slave to the Metacritic scores, however. I still think it looks quite interesting. I'll probably still pick it up at some point. I probably won't pick it up right now, if I'm totally honest with you, but definitely looks interesting. Definitely trying to tell a sort of interesting story. But yeah, maybe not as hot as I certainly thought it was going to be when it was shown on E3 2018, I believe that was. Yeah, not this year, the year before. And the other one was The Sinking City, which was shown this year, and I know that you were quite keen on.
Yeah, I still... So it's had a fairly kind of tepid response as well.
I would say it's kind of 6, 5, 7 as well, so it's maybe a wee bit less still than
absolutely. I think both games basically were hit with it has some interesting ideas, or maybe has an interesting narrative, but gameplay-wise, both games are kind of lacking. They're a bit dated.
Yeah.
And that's...
I think that Sinking City just tried to do too much.
Maybe so, yeah.
I think that there was no... Did that really have to be a fully fledged 3D game in the way that it is with trying to be... With like proper graphical fidelity and things like that, rather than just that kind of more simple art style, more stylized art style.
Maybe so, yeah.
Something like that, I mean, that's why a lot of indie games have stylized art styles, is because they're kind of easier to do.
It's affordable, yeah. I still think, again, I'll check it out at some point, but I'm not going to rush out and grab it just now if it's kind of not the hottest thing.
Yeah, fair enough. And just the last thing that I wanted to mention, which is unfortunate that I couldn't mention it last week because I forgot when we were doing our out of time recording, but SGDQ, which is Summer Games Done Quick, which is a speedrunning community event, has raised over $3 million for Doctors Without Borders. I think that the guys over at GDQ do absolutely amazing work. I think that the speedrunning community, although I'm not part of it, is just one of the best communities in gaming. Like, gamers get a bad rap for lots of toxic communities, whereas the speedrunning community always seems to be like everyone's helping everyone. Everyone's trying to get the best time, and everyone's trying to figure out new things, and everyone's sharing everything. And it just seems like a really good gaming community. And the fact that they raise so much money for what is a really great cause, and they do it twice a year. They do Awesome Games Done Quick, and I think it's like January or the beginning of the year, and then they do this in the middle of the year. Yeah, it's just great. And watching some of those speedruns, it really is incredibly entertaining watching these masters of games just break stuff to just get through it as quickly as possible. It really is remarkable. It's remarkable to watch. I really would recommend that you even just go and watch a few of the YouTube videos. It's too late to donate now anyway, but if you can support those guys in any way, they're definitely worth supporting. Definitely. Okay, time for a break, and then we'll be back for Topic of the Week.
Nice.
And we are back with Topic of the Week. Topic of the Week this week is our Game of the Year so far. And maybe we look at what we might think might be Game of the Year at the end of the year. Because the latter half of the year is loaded. I would say that we probably have a wee bit of a light start to the year in comparison to, well, at least the last couple of years.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
Particularly with God of War and things like that last year. And Horizon Zero Dawn was the year before and things like that. So maybe a wee bit lighter. I mean, let's cut to the chase. I think that Resident Evil 2 Remake and Sekiro, although I've not played Sekiro, I know you have, and I know that it's very, very well received, are probably the two that are head and shoulders right now. Do you agree?
I think so, yeah. There's a few other games that are maybe kind of nipping at their heels, but yeah, like you said, it's not been a quiet year so far, or a late year in terms of been a lot of good releases, but yeah.
There's been a lot of good, solid games, but nothing like God of War that's like an absolute game changer.
Yeah, and that's really blown things out of the water,
Yeah, pun fully intended there, by the way.
Do this
pun
every week.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, Resident Evil 2 Remake, for me, because I've not played Sekiro, is 100% my game of the year so far. That was great. Me and you played through it together. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. It's by far the best remake I've ever played, and that includes Shadow of the Colossus, which is one of my favourite games ever. So that's still a better game. This is a better remake.
I think you're right, yeah. I mean, Resident Evil 2 was just totally joyous to play. If you've not had the chance to play this yet, grab it if you can. It's fantastic. It's so much, it riffs on what the original did really well, but it feels like a modern game.
It does. It feels really modern. That RE engine's great.
Yeah,
so good.
It looks so slick. It's so nice to play. Just made every moment of that game kind of thrilling and horrifying at the same time.
Yeah. So as the only one of us that has played Sekiro, although I'm going to jump in this week, which I'm very excited about, but as the only one of us that has played it, definitely worthy.
I would say so, yeah. I mean, I haven't played a ton of it either, but what I was playing, I was really enjoying. The combat system is fantastic. It takes a lot of getting used to. As you know, if you know anything about this game, it's not an easy game by any stretch, because it's a From Software game. From Software game, yeah. And
by definition,
they don't do solid. Easy. Yeah. That caused a lot of problems on release. But
it's also quite different from the other Souls games.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's the thing, that the world is it's an interesting place to be in, and certainly the early doors missions, which is mostly just kind of learning the mechanics and kind of traversing your way around, but you're learning things quickly, you're picking up new abilities quite quickly, and it just, from where I got to before I kind of had to stop playing, there was just so much happening in it that made me think it's going to develop into this really exciting game, and everyone that's played it to completion or near completion has just absolutely adored it. So like you say, I think alongside Resident Evil 2, it's the only one that's a really genuine Game of the Year contender. I want to throw one other one in there, though.
Go for it, man.
It's not my Game of the Year, because I've barely played it. You've played it a lot more than I have, but just in terms of the conversation that it's dominated, and that's Apex Legends.
Whoa.
Which I think it's
on my wee list here that I've got. Yeah.
I think it has quite a strong claim to be considered up there. I don't think it will ever win Game of the Year, but
I don't think that it should be considered as Game of the Year. Quite genuinely, and I played it a lot. I've not got the season 2 pass, which actually came out this week as well. Yeah. I've not got that. I had the last season pass. I kind of fell off it kind of midway through it as well. So, but I have no grudges against the money that I spent for the season pass. So I definitely played enough of that game to justify the £10 or £11 or whatever it was that I spent on the season pass. It was a fantastic battle royale game. It did some really interesting things, particularly the ping system, which was brand new at the time, was absolutely great. It also broke into the oversaturated battle royale genre and really made waves for a while. It was a solid game,
and clung on.
Slick. It clung on. It's still clinging on. It's nowhere near as high as it was, but I mean, it's still, without a shadow of a doubt, if we go onto Twitch right now, it will be in the top 20 games easy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's still got a big community there. Respawn are still continuing to support it. EA are still continuing to support it. It was an excellent game. I think that it's going to be overshadowed in almost every category, unfortunately. I think that shooters coming out later in the year, your Call of Duties and what have you, will probably overshadow it on kind of action games and shooter games. I think that ongoing games like Destiny will overshadow it in those categories as well. I think that it's probably going to run out getting nothing, unfortunately. I think it's going to get very little Game of the Year, or even like Shooter of the Year, or Battle Royale of the Year, or Ongoing Game of the Year, or whatever. I think in reality it's probably going to get very little of those, sadly. But it was a great game, but unfortunately it was kind of like Spider-Man last year.
I mean, it does happen in certain games.
It was a fantastic game, and if you've not played Spider-Man and you've got a PS4, for God's sake, go and buy it. It's superb. But God of War came out, and Red Dead 2 came out, and I mean, I'm sorry, but it simply wasn't. I mean, it was great. It wasn't that good though, and it wasn't God of War good, which was like generational.
Yeah, and it has to sit in those categories. I do think with Apex though, like, they've done enough to change the battle royale genre. The fact that they forced Fortnite to make similar moves quite quickly, I think, was important. It just depends how much they support it going forward. I actually think in terms of the shooting category, like Call of Duty obviously will be a big deal this year, but it might be quite a negative reaction to it, depending on how far they lean into this kind of dark mode. And what else is coming in that feels, like there's no Battlefield this year as far as we know.
Borderlands, Doom Eternal.
But yeah, I guess so, yeah.
Wolfenstein.
Do you know what I mean? Wolfenstein won't be up there.
Nah, it's a short game. It probably won't. But I mean, you know what I mean? You suddenly start rhyming off games like that, and you're thinking, Jesus, you know what I mean? Where's Apex going to fit into that?
Yeah.
Although it does actually have very good shooting mechanics, because it's the Titanfall shooting mechanics. It's not like, that's not all the game is.
No, absolutely not. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think it's going to be overshadowed a wee bit. So I've got another couple of games here that I just want to kind of lump together. And so these were games that were good this year that I think are going to be pretty much overshadowed. Do you think any of them have any hope, basically? So The Division 2, which I know you played a little bit of, I played a little bit of it as well. Great game. Never really got its claws into me though, if I'm totally honest with you. Devil May Cry 5, which was very well critically received. We both played it. I bounced off it pretty quickly. I've got to say, I wasn't a fan. As someone who'd played both Bayonetta games, I thought they were far superior to it, and they came out several years before it.
Yeah.
So what wasn't for me, but I know a lot of people like it. It was very well critically received. Mario Maker 2 as well, as we mentioned earlier on, has been really well received just now. I think that might be a bit of a dark horse in kind of other categories. Maybe not the game of the year, but a lot of other, like maybe family game or something. I don't.
Could it be an ongoing game if you?
Maybe. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe
that'd be really interesting.
That would be really interesting, actually. And the last one, which I know that we both loved, Mortal Kombat 11.
Yeah, I mean, I think that had enough problems to probably wipe it out from most categories. You've got to say,
but again, it was sadly it was all loot box.
Well, exactly, yeah, and grind and that sort of stuff. So, a fighting game is probably too niche to get the kind of industry votes that it would need for the actual Game Awards.
But is anything even competing with it for
fighting game? Probably not. Samurai Showdown just came out and was sort of getting a bit of buzz, but there's not a great deal else going on. It depends whether or not Smash counts because it released sort of at the same time as last year's Game Awards. Were all being decided.
Well, actually, that's a great point because it would have missed the cutoff for last year's Game Awards. So Smash will actually be in it this year. Yeah, that's a good point. Actually,
but given the kind of recency bias, it's super unlikely to win very much. But could or almost certainly would take fighting game if not for Mortal Kombat 11. The other ones you mentioned there, DMC 5, did not care for it very much. Don't really get what the hype is.
Wasn't my jam either, man.
Yeah. And what was the first one you listed there, sorry?
Division 2.
Yeah, again, I found it quite fun. I just never got my claws fully sunk into it.
It was a good game. The thing is that you really had to get like a kind of party going and things like that for it to be like as good as it could be, and I was never really overly interested in doing that.
No.
You know? But I mean, it was a damn fine game, and I think as one of these ongoing games of service, it's probably one of the better ones I've ever played personally.
Yeah, and certainly had one of the best launches, but it does seem like the community's slightly turning on it. There's been a few more gripes recently than we got at the beginning, so I'm not sure about that.
So just other ones to mention, Kingdom Hearts 3 also came out this year, if you remember that, way back when. That's just another game that I do not get it. I do not get why that's such a big deal. I know that it has super fans. I just don't get it, but maybe it's your game of the year. It's certainly not mine. Rage 2 also came out this year. Was kind of a lot of people kind of bounced off it. It was kind of good, not great.
Yeah.
And Days Gone, I think, fairly similar. The kind of first PlayStation exclusive, I would say, certainly recently, that has just kind of been a bit of a damp squib.
Yeah, again, the community seems to like it, but not so much beyond that. I would like to throw Baba Is You into the not for the game of the year.
Well,
but
Lewis Camley, we're coming on to the indie section of my list here.
Nice one.
So we have Baba Is You. Outer Wilds, I know, is getting a lot of buzz right now.
That'll be
a lot of buzz.
Nominated for the main prize, I think.
Really?
I'm putting that there just now, yeah.
Nah, don't think so.
I think so, man.
I think it might win indie, but I don't even think it's nominated.
I think it's in the, what is it normally, 5 or 7 nominations or whatever?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's necessarily limited, but say about 5.
I think it sits there. We'll see.
Both claim. Katana Zero and Observation were the other two that I also had as well, which I think are all pretty solid. They're all games that I definitely want to play at some point. Outer Wilds being pretty near the top of the list, but honestly, Baba Is You is definitely appealing to me just as much as
yeah. Good stuff.
So, okay, right, what do we think about the rest of the year? The rest of the year is absolutely loaded, but do you think Death Stranding, which I think is the highly touted one, the one that everyone thinks probably will win Game of the Year, do you think it wins Game of the Year? Because I think this goes one or two ways. It's either Game of the Year and is absolutely brilliant, or it's Anthem.
Oh, I don't think that. I think it's this year's Red Dead, probably. I think it's going to be utterly compelling, and some people will say it's the greatest video game ever made, and you know, the highest form of video game art that we've ever had. And I think a lot of other people will say, what the fuck is this? To really turn against it in a way that we sort of saw happen with Red Dead last year.
Yeah, I think the problem was that Red Dead was unapologetically slow.
Yeah,
it was slow by design.
It was interested in its own vision,
and it started slow. But God, man, what a story was told there.
Well, that's it.
It was amazing. And
I just from what the bare minimum of what we know about Death Stranding so far, it doesn't look like it's going to be the most incredible gameplay experience, but it might be the most incredible video game experience. And so I think it might count against it. It really does depend what else is there. Obviously, Red Dead probably would have taken that award had not God of War come along.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
And I don't know that we certainly don't have games yet this year that I think would do that to it. But
well, let's just run down some of them.
Yeah,
okay. So Star Wars, the new Star Wars game, Respawn, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, Control by Remedy, who we've also mentioned in the podcast, Doom Eternal, and Borderlands 3, which we just mentioned as well. Link's Awakening remake, which looks absolutely stunning. Gears 5, obviously the big Xbox exclusive this year. Wolfenstein Youngblood, although it's only a short game. The first, well, since the reboot really of the Wolfenstein series, have been absolutely solid. And The Outer Worlds by Obsidian, which looks like Fallout in space, which looks amazing.
Yeah.
Any of them you think are a bit of a dark horse?
I think a
For
lot.
full game of the year, honestly, if I'm throwing things out here right now, I think that there's so much nostalgia for Doom, is that if that is... That's going to be there. I'm pretty confident that's going to be there, and it looks wild.
I really don't think so. Not because I think it does look amazing as well, but I just think that generally these things don't go to big time shooters like that.
I think that Doom 2016 was definitely nominated for stuff like this as well. So I think that Doom's almost the exception to the rule. You know,
maybe so. Yeah, I would be surprised if it went that way, but it does look incredible. I think it will be in and around that conversation. For me, from that list that you just read, the most likely in some ways is the Outer Worlds. I think that like the buzz that's coming out of E3 this year around that game from Obsidian seems to be a lot of positivity, a lot of really interesting stuff being said about it. I like the idea that it's quite a contained RPG setting. It's not this 80, 100, 120 hour experience. It's trying to get in and tell you its story and get back out. And I think that might count in its favour. There's not a lot else there that I think is really pushing the boundaries, though, and so that might just hand it to Death Stranding. I think, as I said earlier, like Wolfenstein feels unlikely to be able to kind of push into that bracket. We haven't even mentioned things like Pokemon or Fire Emblem.
I've got... You're jumping ahead.
You don't let me see your list.
list. Anyway, so again, there was a... I've actually only just realised now that all these games are Japanese, but Fire Emblem, Shenmue 3, Pokemon Sword and Shield, and Astral Chain were other ones that I just wanted to mention, which I just think are like skating under that. I mean, all of those games will undoubtedly have an audience. Most of that audience is me. But I don't realist. It's like Octopath Traveler. Like, absolutely loved Octopath Traveler last year. No chance in hell that was ever going to win Game of the Year. Do you know what I mean? It's that. But of those ones that I really think could push, I really genuinely think Control could be a dark horse here. I really do. Do I realistically think that it's going to be Kojima's new game? No. But I think that could be really good. Like I said, Doom Eternal could also be really damn good, and Outer Wilds, really, I think, as you said, the buzz coming out of it from E3 was really positive. But
Outer Worlds, you meant there, right?
Sorry, Outer Worlds, yes. God, it's so annoying. Outer Worlds, I do mean Outer Worlds. But I think it might suffer from the same problem maybe that Wolfenstein does, in that it's, semi-linear, I suppose, but it's also not the longest experience. Do you know what I mean? It's probably going to be in the 15 to 20 hour range, not the 30 hour range.
Yeah.
Know? And I don't know, maybe Control will suffer from that as well, because we recently found out that that's going to be about a 15 to 20 hour game as well. So maybe these games simply don't have enough content to push it up to what Kojima's game is going to be, which is going to be God knows how long you're going to be.
Well, absolutely, but again, just not to harp on it, that Red Dead comparison, but longevity and slowness counted against that game, and so I think maybe
not for me.
And and we know that Journey won Game of the Year a few years back when it was released, and it's a fairly short experience. So I don't think it's the only thing, but the one other one that you mentioned there actually is Star Wars. I don't think licensed games have a lot of chance, but it has been some year for Respawn, and this does look like it's this, the Souls version of Star Wars.
Yeah, I know. Although the demo didn't seem to blow many people away, although I personally actually thought it looked quite good.
And the longer one certainly did for the press.
The longer one did for the press, and the press got their hands on it, and a lot of the press were saying, "Oh no, that's actually like when you're playing this, it's actually quite good and quite satisfying." Just wanted to mention a couple of indies as well. A game that kind of we don't really have a lot to do with, but Spelunky, which was a massive indie game at the time, beloved. It's a roguelike game, like a roguelike in the truest sense, I believe. And Spelunky 2 comes out this year, so I think that's maybe a wee bit of a dark horse for indie game of the year. Certainly, realistically, probably not game of the year unless it's absolutely staggering. And if Hollow Knight Silksong comes out this year, which I don't think that it will. I think that ultimately it's next year, but that's the only other one. If that comes out, as far as I'm concerned, that could be good enough to be Game of the Year. Like, it would be like Celeste level good, is how I'm imagining it. And that, to me, could have been Game of the Year in an easier year where Red Dead and God of War weren't.
It's kind of that makes me think games like the Outer Wilds and stuff might have more of a chance this year, because we don't have those killer games like God of War or Spider-Man.
Well, I tell you what, see if Death Stranding flops, and I mean like properly flops, like Anthem flops, and I don't really believe that's going to happen. I definitely don't believe that. But if it does, hypothetically, like, this is open season. This could go anyway, as far as I'm concerned.
I've not even mentioned Gears 5, which is due this year.
Well, I mentioned that in my list, but I don't really have a lot to say about it. Yeah. As we've said before, me and Lewis are primarily PlayStation gamers. I've played very little Gears in my life, and quite frankly, I don't think Gears 5 looks particularly good. But how would I know? Because they've not showed us any gameplay, and it's coming out very soon.
Well, that's why you think that.
We dig there at the Xbox. Oh no, you guys are lovely. All right, okay, I think we'll just wrap things up there then. Please remember that you can find PlayersToo on all the social media. That's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, the lot. And if you could give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts, that is really, really appreciated. I cannot stress enough how good that is for us. If you can just give us a 5-star review, or even better, if you could just give us a wee thumbs up emoji in the review box, or just an exclamation. It doesn't even have to be a review, just anything. Just say you are good, and that's fine. Or just don't say anything, just put in a full stop and then send it away. It really doesn't matter what you say, just as long as we're getting those things. It does so much for the exposure of the podcast. It really, really does.
We'd also love to have any of your comments or questions on social media, so hit us up with anything that you want to tell us about the show or anything you want to ask us. We can bring them up in future shows, and definitely head over to PlayersToo.com for our written content. We'll be updating the site a little bit this week, including with information about our first play-along game, which we spoke about on last week's episode, which is Into the Breach. So yeah, grab a copy of that, play along with us, give us your thoughts, and we will be talking about it in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah. Fantastic game, definitely worth the money. However much it costs on Switch, it's worth exactly that amount of money.
That's very fortunate.
All right, guys, see you later.
Thanks.